So nice to see so many people in the talk. Can we already start, or is it? Because I didn't hear any information
you can.
That the recording has started.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, indeed, I'm going to talk about the HR-VPP, which is the high-resolution phenology, vegetation, phenology, and productivity product of Copernicus. But first, I'll introduce myself because I see many new names here. So currently, I'm assistant professor at ITC, University of Twente. Here you can see our logo all over the presentation. And I finished my PhD in 2021 in the same university, same faculty. And before that, I studied plant phenology, plant physiology, not phenology, physiology at in St. Petersburg State University back home, and also bioinformatics. So I like programming, I like plants, and now I like also images, working with images. So I'm happy to tell you about our study. And this study I'm going to tell you about is already published. It's been accepted this year. And you see we're a bit of time traveling here. It's June 2025, the edition. This is a collaborative work of the previous cost action, Senseco, and actually this one as well, because, for example, Joel joined only this cost action. So this is also an example of the work that you can do using the network, the cost actions, such as Pangeos, for your research. So all these authors are Senseco and Pangeos members, and you see our chair of today and the co-chair of the cost action. This is Slava, is the lead idea generator. So I'm going to talk about 4 parts. So first I will define what phenology is, if what we think phenology is, especially from satellites. You will see it's needed. Then how we compared the vegetation phenology and productivity, what we found, the gap, the problem that we found, and how we solved it with the other algorithms. And of course, I will summarize it at the end. So phenology. Phenology is a study of biological life cycles. You can imagine for a crop is a bit easier to think of when you plant a seed, because it's a single season. When you plant a seed, the crop emerges, and then leaves develop, and then fruits develop. But first the flowering happens, and then roots develop. This is potato. I'm from Netherlands, so of course I will give an example of potato. For potato, we harvest not the flowers, but the tubers, the low ground part. So tuber initiation is important in the phenological development of potato. And later you will see aging, yellowing of leaves, and ultimately the plant is ready for harvest. At the bottom, you see the BBCH scale, which is universal scale where numbers from 0 to 100 indicate the maturity rate of the plant, if you want. If we go from the single plant or a field a bit bigger to a bigger scale, larger scale, we will see the phenology. For example, we can imagine phenology of a forest as an ecosystem, phenology of ecosystem. And those networks exist. For example, the German Weather Service, DWD, has a network of phenological measurement stations, and PhenoCam network is an world network that monitors with images how plants develop. So here we are not talking anymore about the exact stages, BBCH, although they can be somehow related. And I always recommend this video of Neon. You see, it's only 4 minutes, measuring plant phenology from ground to space. That gives a very nice explanation of how they do it. However, if we start working with satellites, then we are talking about land surface phenology. This is phenology, but with remote sensing. Because we have images, some of them are of good quality, like these black dots. Some of them are of poor quality, like these dots, small dots. But overall, if we smooth, we will be able to see that somewhere, this 2019, 2020, somewhere the curve goes up, somewhere the curve goes down, and we can integrate over the periods. And what we can see from remote sensing is the green up period, the green peak, and the green down, or Some people call it brown down because it's actually a browning phase. So this is what remote sensing phenology or land surface phenology is, and that's what we're trying to match. There are quite a few metrics of vegetation phenology and productivity that we can get from space. They are all, by the way, available in the VPP dataset. We are only focusing in this talk on two, the start of season and end of season, but there are all sorts of integrals. There's also peak of season and length of season, and all sorts of integrals that they make and that they provide that can be correlated with plant productivity directly. But here's only phenology, so start of season and end of season. And why this study emerged is because before Copernicus launched 10-meter phenology, there were only 300-meter phenology. And if we look at the field, this is the field, one of the first sites of this study, the Lamasquer site in France. Here we can see the field is here. And here at 300 meter, we cannot see the field. And it's also not very clear how to aggregate those pixels in order to represent the phenology of this field. Because you see, this field is, for example, in this small figure, is growing, and this is not. This is bare, this is bare, this is bare, this is city, this is forest. So in this 300 meter, what was available before 2021, we just cannot deduct phenology. So now we have long enough time series since 2018, even 2017, Sentinel-2. The dataset was released, and the problem, the gap that exists, is that there are no validation data. So if you want to evaluate the phenology of the forest, you have PhenoCam network that I showed. But if you want to validate phenology of the single field, there's simply no data. You don't know when the field is, by definition, when the field is planted, when the crops emerged, when the field was harvested, unless you have been collecting this data. So the gap, the first, the need to validate is because the product is new. And the second, the gap, the problem is that there is no data to validate because nobody collected the data at so fine scale. And so that was our task. That's what we did. At the beginning, the product is available. We downloaded it from BKO DS system. And then we thought, well, who has been recording this data for ages? The ICOS integrated carbon observation system and the PIs of eddy covariance towers. Well, they know what they were planting. In Europe, because dataset is European, in Europe there are 8 eddy covariance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 eddy covariance towers of long observation that were functioning during the period when we were measuring. Every year there's more and more. So it's a big thank to the PIs who provided us with the data of the start of the season, of the sowing date and the harvesting date and the crop type that they were using. So this is all points. These are all points we were able to find. The ones that start with the country code dash are the part of ICOS or FluxNet towers. The ones that only represent the country, so Greece, Bulgaria, Germany, Spain, and Sweden. There are extra sites that we talk to. For example, you may know who is from Bulgaria collected the data. So once we aggregated for the fields using the shape, the boundaries, these are the results of the start of season. So here you see the sowing date. At the end of the day, we decided not to play with any growing degree days, to play with any emergence. So it's purely sowing. So we have to understand that this bias that we see is because there was time between the crop is sown and something is visible above the ground. So green leaves appear. So we are fine with this bias. It's probably with debiasing. We can be good enough. So here is the SOS from HR-VPP product as it is. And for winter crops, you see there is a split. Some seasons are okay, and some seasons are, well, actually those seasons are okay, and those seasons are terribly off, because this is the dashed red line is the one-to-one line where all points have to be, are expected to be, and this is the blue line is the regression line with this correlation coefficient squared. So we already saw that spring crops perform okay. I said bias we acknowledge. Winter crops perform worse. With the end of season, it's even worse. Well, even better for spring crops, bias of 3 days. Even worse for the winter crops because the split cycle, so those seasons, they're totally off. So that was the first part. We saw, okay, for spring crops, HR-VPP works. How to make it work for winter crops and why it does not work. So then we went one step backward from the final product to the vegetation indices. And this conclusion we received, if it's summer crop, spring crop, however you call a crop that you plant in spring and harvest in autumn in Europe, it's okay to use this dataset. It works very well. If it's winter crop, winter wheat, winter rapeseed, mostly in Europe, then you have to do something extra. So we start looking at the indicators, physically based, PPI, LAI, just purely remote sensing, NDVI, and we start using custom algorithms, daytimes, timesat, to try to match, try to retrieve the indices better. So once more, how it looked like, the data from 2017 until now, the blue line here on the background is the plant phenology index, PPI. This is the one that when it goes up, at some point the season starts. Yes, so the question is at which point? The boxes without any hedge, so the orange box represents rapeseed. So rapeseed was planted here in 2017 and then 2021. Brown is the winter wheat, so 2018 was winter wheat, 20 winter wheat, 2022 winter wheat. There's barley. There is a cover crop, so some grasses that we didn't use in the analysis. And the hedge, this dashed area, are the seasons that HR-VPP product sees. And you see that, well, this is the most obvious, that's why I put it here. You see that there was some signal in the spring, but it was ignored, filtered out, and only the second part, the spring part, so sorry, this is the autumn part, and the spring part was captured as a season, and this one was ignored as a noise. And this is quite a trend, so every autumn part here is ignored, and only the spring part of the season is captured. Then we looked at the other indices, so PPI is the one that producer uses, but there were also LAI, FAPR, and DVI. And once we look at the site with this through the prism of these indices, we can see that indeed, if we look at FAPR, if we look at NDVI, the surge, this upward thing is visible already in autumn in the signal, so it's logical to put a threshold here. But the main signals, PPI and LAI, they start going up only in spring. So that gave us an idea that if we use this, we will never be able to mark the start of season here when it really starts, because there's no signal. The signal appears only in the greening indices. So yeah, we took all of them. We used timesat. This is, by the way, the same software that is used to generate HR-VPP product from Lund University, which Zhang Tsai retrieved for us. Then we took that times. This is a software developed by Santiago Belda. And here Claudio, the second, also retrieved the seasons for us. Here's also a YouTube tutorial of Senseco, how to use this tool, if you're interested. And after comparing, I think this may be on the recording, you will be able to analyze those metrics. These are biases. These are different smoothing methods that we can discuss during the question answer part that we checked. But overall, you see here are some large numbers. Here are some smaller numbers. Smaller numbers of biases. Good. Large bias of numbers is bad. So apparently for start of season, FAPR and DVI, as I showed you in the previous graph, they work better than PPI and LAI. But for the end of season date, the harvesting date, PPI and LAI work better than FAPR and NDVI. Actually, here is interesting that double logistic time sat is really good even with AVHRR and NDVI. But can also discuss the details and implications of that later. So overall, what this study shows is first that VPP dataset, vegetation, phenology, and productivity of Copernicus, you can directly take it for summer crops if you are satisfied with this performance. Start of season R-square 0.71, bias of 50 days with start of season date. End of season 0.76, bias of 3 days. I think really cannot make it better. It's perfect. For winter crops, either you are fine with knowing that you have a large SOS bias for winter wheat and you have 2 seasons for rapeseed instead of 1, or you have to use custom algorithms with timesat, with date times, maybe look at our paper, which parameterization we used, because that was the trick. And the reason for this correction for winter crops is due to the choice of PPI as an indicator. The dataset is pan-European. The Lund University is in Sweden. In Sweden, there is the nights are darker. There's almost polar night. So the PPI index works for boreal forest to correct the solar zenith angle influence. And as a result, all winter crops are kind of suffering from this correction, overcorrection, by mismatching start of season and end of season. So if you want to retrieve SOS, it's better to use NDVI and AVHRR instead of PPI and LAI. So those are at the end of my presentation. If you have questions even after the talk, or if you're watching YouTube recording of that, here's my email for questions. And thank you. Thanks a lot. That's it.